This is the Community and Economic Development Committee, October 28th, 2020. You want to do the roll call, Mandy?
Yes. Mr. Whittleton?
Here.
Ms. Kennedy?
Here.
Mr. Peterson?
Present.
Mr. Constant? Mr. Dunbar?
Here.
Ms. Salatel?
Here.
And then non-members, Mr. Rivera? Mr. Perez Verdia? Ms. Allard? Ms. LaFrance? Ms. Quinn Davidson? Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. We had Michelle McNulty is here, and she wanted to add to the agenda where they were with the Title 21 possible changes related to homeless and transient shelters. So I'd like to add that to the agenda. Do I get to do that? Do we have to have a motion from someone?
I'll move to add that to the agenda, just so we can do it properly, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
Second.
Okay, any opposition? I'd like to do it first so we can get our legs underneath us before we dive into the marijuana stuff. We'll let Michelle finish her coffee. And Forrest, you had a question?
Yeah, I had someone want to discuss with the chairs here, you and Miss Kennedy. So, you know, we've long done the CD meeting on Thursday morning, and I understand that there was a conflict that one of our members had that required us to move to Wednesday. But I'm wondering if, you know, Wednesday often, almost half the time, follows an assembly meeting, and our assembly meetings now go to midnight basically every time, or 11. If we could start, we could start these meetings a little later, maybe at 10 a.m. Is there some reason why we stuck to the 9 a.m. time when we shifted from Thursday to Wednesday?
I'm not aware. I think it was to accommodate Meg's school schedule in some regards. Is that correct? I think either Mandy or Meg could address that.
Yes, Mr. Welton, it was Wednesday is a non-synchronous learning day for ASD. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, if we have 9 a.m. meetings, I'm also getting my kiddo into class at 9 a.m. and assisting her. So it was double duty for me. And a Wednesday is a much more flexible day because she is learning more self-directed.
So I'm not, Mr. Welton, I'm not questioning
Sure.
why we moved from Thursday to Wednesday. I'm saying, why do we keep it at 9 a.m. when we know most of us are staying up till midnight the night before? Yeah,
I got that. I just wanted to, I didn't remember exactly why we switched to Wednesday, and I'm fine with that. I'm happy to accommodate. So is that, Mandy, is there other meetings that we would bump into if we started at 10 on Wednesdays?
I can look into the schedule and see. I don't think so off the top of my head. I think if we moved it back, it wouldn't be a problem, but I'll verify that. I think we just did it at 9 for consistency. So I'll look at that and I will get back to you guys.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Forrest. I think we all share that that desire. Okay, so Michelle, are you ready to go?
John, this is Jamie. I'm in queue. Can I say something really quick?
Sure, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I didn't know if you saw me over in queue. Okay, so I just hopped on because I actually have to drive my children into school every morning because they go to school and they are in school that they have to attend in person. So are we doing, okay, so just so I get clarification. So all our meetings changed with you guys at 8 o'clock. I agree with Forrest in regards to the 10 o'clock. Is there some other time frame that's changed as far as this meetings? I'm in the car at 8 in the morning taking my kids to school. So I'm trying to figure out if this only pertains to today and this particular meeting. Is that correct?
Miss Allard,
Um,
this is Mandy. So typically
Thank
the
you.
meetings are at 9 a.m. on Thursdays. We moved it to Wednesdays to accommodate school, the ASD schedule. The one meeting that was at 8 a.m. was the first meeting we shifted to a Wednesday, and there was a health policy committee meeting that would have conflicted if we had started at 9. So we started at 8 that one day, and then the rest of them moved back to the original time of 9 a.m., but now on Wednesdays until further notice. So it's
Okay.
not an issue to move it to later.
Okay. All right. As long as I'm just hoping it's not at 8 ever because I can't attend 8 o'clock meetings. Okay. Thank you.
So Jamie, does 10 a.m. work okay?
Oh, absolutely. It's just that with the
Okay.
driving the carpool in the mornings, 10 o'clock is perfect. Whatever.
Sure.
Just anything but 8 o'clock because I'm driving kids.
Okay, well, that sounds
Thank
good.
you. Okay.
Okay,
thanks.
so we're gonna look into switching to 10, and Mandy will check out the schedules and we'll see. Good. Thanks for
Yeah.
bringing that up.
Mr. Weddleton, can I say something?
Sure, go ahead.
Putting the queue there on the chat.
Okay, I'll start watching the queue on the chat, sorry.
Sorry. So I know that there are other meetings on Wednesday, as there have been on Thursday, and sometimes it is health policy or what have you. I wonder if perhaps we could, Mandy, when you go back and speak with the clerk and check the schedules, maybe it can be communicated to the clerk and or the chair that I would certainly be open to shifting everything to the right, as they say. I mean, if we have to start health policy a half hour later or what have you, we set our own calendar, and I think our calendar should adapt not only to the changes at ASD, but also to the fact that there was a time when we finished assembly meetings at 7 or 8 at night. Be behind us, and so we need to adapt for ourselves and also for the public. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anything else on this? Okay, moving on. Michelle, did you want to tell us where you are with the Title 21 stuff?
Good morning. Yes, thanks. And thank you for letting me get in here and do a quick update. I'm going to share my screen briefly, but just wanted to give you all an update. I know that this isn't the subcommittee that's been dealing with this issue, but I think a lot of you from that subcommittee are in this. So as everybody knows, we are updating Title 21 to allow as a conditional use homeless and transient shelters. Originally, it was just going to be into the B3 general business district. But upon looking at all of the B districts, it also seems appropriate to include it as a conditional use and also the B2C. So we've prepared a draft AO, which includes allowing homeless and transient shelters into B2C and the B3 zoning districts. And we are starting our public outreach process this month and actually this week. So we are going to be making the public hearing draft available online at probably the end of this week, no later than the beginning of next week. We are on the Hands Commission agenda as well as Federation of Community Councils and the Downtown Community Council for November. The purpose of the Federation of Community Councils meeting is to kick off the project, let all of the community councils know that we're doing an amendment that is area wide, and then extending the invitation or opportunity to every community council that we are happy to provide their individual council a presentation. And we're keeping it open that we can attend both in November and December, recognizing that a lot of community councils like to get an update and then have time to formulate their comments and questions and then come back so that we can address those the following month. We are on track to have a public hearing at Planning and Zoning, hopefully in January, but given that we have a lot of large ordinances that are also going through, it might get pushed to the February agenda. And then the P&Z will recommend approval to the Assembly, and we plan on being to you all no later than May of 2021 for final approval. So just look forward to, as we're hitting your community councils, any support that you may have to offer for this project. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, any comments on that? Look at the queue here, chat. Meg?
Thanks for that, Michelle. If you wouldn't mind, I think one additional group may be worth talking to. I think they're interested in both sides of this issue is HRAC, the Houseless Resource Advisory Commission, and I'd be happy to make a introduction if you would like. Their meetings are generally pretty short, but they definitely stay up to date on all things happening around homelessness.
Thank you. And yes, I would appreciate the introduction. Thank you very much for that suggestion and offer.
Okay, Forrest, were you in the queue, or is that was from before?
That's from before, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Michelle, when we broached this before, of course, it drew a lot of interest, and I think partly it was just rolled out not well, and I take blame for that. But the comments we got, and some validity to it, is people who had B3 said, wait a minute, you're essentially rezoning, by redefining what B2 and now, B2C might be, and not technically in the way we view it, but in the common person's view of it, that it is essentially a rezone. Now B3 and B2C mean something different. And they made the point that if you do a rezone, you have to notify people within 500 feet of the property. It's fairly extensive, but here we can do this broad citywide thing that is perceived as a rezone without any kind of mailing and real extensive outreach. And I think, if we sent a postcard to everybody within 500 feet of B3 or B2C, that would be extremely expensive. But I think the point is some way to reach out to, business groups at least. So, we go through the community councils and stuff, but that's not really touching the people most impacted by these things. But I'd go to make sure the Chamber of Commerce knows, Board of Realtors, I don't know who else, but kind of, are you able to do that kind of outreach?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the Anchorage Downtown Partnership, we've definitely, they're very active in the Downtown Community Council, but we'll also, we keep them involved in a lot of things, basically anything that we do downtown. And then I suspect the Midtown Community Council, which has heavily with the businesses, will be integral in this as well.
Okay. Yeah, we have to really ramp it up. I mean, and of course, my selfish view is, if you get all the information out there and let the Planning and Zoning Commission beat all the controversy out of it, that's my preference. But, but they will have some big meetings. This is, people are very attuned to this issue now. So, but in fairness, we need to get word out.
No, that's great suggestions. And I welcome any other suggestions on groups that you all know of that we should hit, and either today or just email me if you think of something later. We're happy to try to reach out. We want to get as many people as we can on this.
I mean, for my part, if you would, when you have the document ready to go to the Planning Commission, and I guess you're very close to it, is email that to us, and then we can share it to groups that we're connected with and start getting it out that way.
Okay. Thanks, and thank you, Assemblywoman Kennedy. I see your recommendation about the Downtown Rotary Club.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So, okay. Well, good. Is that it, Michelle?
That's it.
Okay. All right. I guess. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Continue discussion of topics, possible updates to the marijuana code. I was, where are we on this? There's a problem with doing this thing at 9 a.m. on Wednesday after midnight meeting. I was looking for my notes from last meeting and didn't find them. Do you have something, Crystal?
Well, we have the ordinance, the draft ordinance that we've looked over once or twice before. Mandy had some, I think there might have been a couple of other state updates on that. So I would say maybe Mandy or even Dean could update us on what document we have right now. Mandy mailed that out yesterday, I believe. So anyway, I would say Mandy or Dean might lead us forward at this point. Thanks.
Okay. All right, I've got that document here. So is this, Mandy, is this something we could go through. So this is, can you tell us about what you sent us yesterday, Mandy?
So this was the AO that we had been discussing. I went through and added all of the state regs into it that were the new ones, and kind of went through and did some other like potential cleanup, some other additions that were from like 2018 that I don't know if we wanted to add in or not. I don't recall. So I kind of put notes into the side. And then Dean had some notes for some stuff as well. So this is kind of just an updated version of the one that you saw with more of the state stuff incorporated. And I don't know if Dean wanted to go through it.
Okay, just so we went through this last meeting, and it has, and then there's additional stuff scattered through it. Okay, and it's not that long. Okay, well, let's go ahead and go through this and see what changes. So Dean, did you want to go through this?
This is Dean. So, I'm not really, well, I can try. I'm not really prepared for this. I haven't been able to work on it since last week. There's just too many other stuff and too many meetings since last time we went through. But Mandy's got some changes that, and I'm not really certain. I was only able to look at the document briefly this morning before the meeting. I'm a little uncertain here because the changes in my comments don't show in the document Mandy sent, so I'm not sure if they were lost in the updating or what, but I guess let's just go through. I'll pull it up on my screen and try to track some of the changes that Mandy added. And I noted that some of them are for regulations that predate the date where I had started to update from regulation changes. So they had some before that. I had a list of everything we were doing, and I started when we did this project. Regulations effective from February 21, 2019 onward. And then I guess Mandy had found a bunch from before that date that were included here and some after. Mandy, correct me if I'm wrong. Let's see. So let me.
Yeah, that's correct.
Get my share screen on. So, are you all able to see my screen? Mandy, will you have anything to add so
Yes.
far? So I guess the first change from the draft yesterday is page 3 here, adding this exception to 1080-36, at least regarding where we not issue a transfer renewal license. 1080-36, that part, I believe the change was that's here, and so that exception accommodates what I think is this additional language in H. Is that right, Mandy?
Yes.
Anyway,
yeah.
So that's that first change. The second change is some language here at the top of page 4. And this, I think, reflects that state reg change that was just identifying not just shareholders, but also the officers like president, VP, directors of each corporation. And then I guess a bunch of places we've added or endorsement, which I thought we took care of before for some reason. But guess there's a few other places where we needed to add that, not just about licenses, but also imposing conditions on endorsements, and you'll see this show up in other places in the document. And here just reflects some change to the time of residency. Let's see. And I'm not quite certain what this means here. To create a public notice form, I guess that to trigger the municipality's public notices for our application process, we need the states first and so forth. So I guess that just adds some clarity. Is that right, Mandy?
So this, I think, is in reference to the state's public notice form. The state, whenever a new marijuana license application is submitted, requires that the applicant do a public notice. They do the public posting. They have to put it in the newspaper for a certain amount of time, and they are required to send it to their local governing body. So I don't know if we want to reference like Title 21 for the land use notice.
Okay, I guess that's fine. This isn't the municipal application process then, but I think it was just intended to say, start the state's application, whatever their requirements are. So I guess this thing just tracks more of what the state says is needed. So, and this part about the fees and notice requirements, I'm actually need to look at that more to understand what that change is all about. But I guess it adds some time frame here to the application and the notice requirements timing.
Yeah, it's in regards to this G section that's added here about the director providing notice to the applicant.
And here's the G that we referred to. So, and this just allows the director to notify the applicant that, well, the application's not quite complete, you know, and rather than just rejecting, give them some opportunity to cure and provide missing information, missing requirements for an application, and so forth. And so 90 days to get that done and make sure it's complete.
And I think that, and Ryan can correct me, but I think that the planning department kind of has a time frame on, so the planning department receives the new application for the license and the special land use, and I believe they already have a process for their timeline on when they have to get all of their stuff done and into the planning department for the land use. So I'm not sure if this conflicts with them or if it would be an okay thing to add. But that would be something to talk to Ryan about because it kind of affects the way that they receive stuff potentially.
Yeah, this is Raniel with the planning department. I can speak to that.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, so Title 21 actually, if somebody submits an application for something, it can sit in our office for a year in an incomplete status before we have the authority to discard that application. So that is quite a bit longer than 90 days, but I guess I'd rather stick to that timeline than creating another timeline. Granted, this is pointing towards the license, but the license and special land use permit application are one and the same. So I guess that's my initial thoughts on that.
Ryan, have you run into applications where things got delayed in 90 days? I mean, 3 months seems long for some things, but we've seen these, where they find a location, they sign a lease, and they start going through this process, and it can be a year later that we see it. So is 90 days enough?
Well, so this is just for them to get a complete application. So this is for them to remedy if there's anything lacking. So they can have a deemed complete application sitting indefinitely after this, but this 90-day period is specifically to have them fix any deficiencies.
Yeah, and
Okay.
through Title 21, we have a 15-day timeline to notify the applicant of what's missing in an application. But after that point, that's where that 1-year timeline kind of comes into play, as we have 15 days to let them know what's missing, but then that incomplete application can sit in our office for a year until we can discard it. In 90 days, some of them, the vast majority of them, they get what we need within 15 to 30 days. I'd say 90 days is a lengthy time, and that's not usually the norm.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mandy,
Actually,
rolling
John,
through.
this is Meg. I was in the queue. Can I
Meg?
ask
Oh,
a
I'm
question?
sorry, I missed
Can
that. Yeah,
I
please
was
do.
Thanks. So would this be, so I'm thinking of that instance, and it may have been an outlier, but where we had the individual who was waiting on some sort of sign off from a landlord. Is that something that's required in order to make the application complete? Or is that something that just is later remedied? Because I can see we've had that happen once or twice, and it definitely took longer than 90 days.
Yeah, so through the chair, Ms. Altel, so that particular situation, I fully admit that was a bit of a goof. What should have happened is we should have gotten that authorization prior to deeming the application complete. But we just had sort of a miscommunication with our legal department on that. And the application unfortunately went forward without that. But an application cannot be deemed complete until all relevant materials are submitted and an application fee is paid. So up until that point, it's just retained in our office in an incomplete status. But once it's deemed complete, it's scheduled for a meeting and it moves forward.
If I may,
Sure.
Mr. Chair. So I can see a few times here where potentially an applicant could get jammed up due to no fault of their own, such as in that other instance that I mentioned. So I guess unless there would be some problem with it, I don't know if seeking an extension for some kind of good cause reason might make sense, because if you're really, dogging the issue and you're really trying to get this like piece of paper you need and it is through no fault of your own, but 90 days is about to lapse, you have to file a new application and pay a new fee, then that seems unfair if it's really not the applicant's fault. So just wanted to put that out there for discussion so that we don't inadvertently penalize applicants who are really on top of it and just really can't get something because of some other third party.
Yeah, and through the chair, that's Ryan Yell with the planning department. I guess I could speak to that if I may.
Sure, go, please do.
So there's only one application fee that gets paid. There's never an instance where an applicant is paying multiple application fees unless they're applying for multiple entitlements. But at which time this application goes before the assembly, they've only paid one application fee. The only instance they would pay two is if the assembly were to deny an application and then they were to reapply at a later date. So it's not like when they submit an application and there's materials missing that we throw that application away. We retain that application for 1 year pending them submitting any missing items. And then at which time we deem that application complete. Could be 2 weeks down the road, could be 6 months down the road, but at that point, we go ahead and deem the application complete and we get it scheduled for the next available meeting. So.
Mr. Chair, if I may then, I think we're still on the same thread here, but it seems that subsection G here, or section G, changes that process. And after 90 days, it says an applicant must file a new application and pay a new application fee if their application is incomplete. So while I appreciate that that seems to be the practice, this provision seems like it will change that and could subject the applicant to multiple fees.
Ms. Saltel, this is Mandy. So this is kind of part of some of my questions is right now there is not a license fee. We don't have an application fee for the license. There's the permit fee for the special land use. And so that was my question of, do we want to leave it as that? We have used operating fee in other places in Title 10 for the marijuana license. We are not allowed to charge an application fee because of the state's restrictions, but we could potentially charge an operating fee. And so that's been kind of a question looming is, do we leave this language in as the possibility of beginning to charge some sort of fee for the licensing portion? So this would be in reference if we charged for the license application portion.
Okay, did I hear Dean?
I have comments on that.
Dean?
Oh, yes. A little interesting. I looked up this maybe a year ago or last spring about the fees. So the states got a license fee and a license fee. They have a separate application fee, which presumably covers their costs of administering the licensing program and reviewing it and so forth. The state law prohibits, I guess, the local municipalities from charging a license fee because we get half of the state's license fee. However, I don't think it says we can't charge an application fee. So an application fee might be possible for us. So that's what I had, my thoughts, as I recall, from about a year ago on this. And we might look up that an application fee because, of course, we have mainly Ryan employees and so forth reviewing applications, and we've got our overhead and all that. So I think that we are able to charge an application fee and just a fair amount to cover those. But the annual license fees, what we're prohibited from imposing. So anyway, we could look at that some more. Oh, I had some other thoughts as to the timing and the 90 days, and I was editing a little bit as I was listening to the comments. I think you saw my edits on screen, probably. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I wanted to mention that here, this is Title 10, and as Ryan acknowledged, it's a license, and he said, well, the license and planning applications are pretty much the same, and I would kind of disagree with that. Sorry, Ryan. Their special land use permit is separate. It's got a bunch of its own submittal requirements. They don't require it for the state's license or municipal license, but I think, though, that it does make sense to have a congruent period here, and the 90 days. If it's specific to marijuana license or special land use permit application, then that governs over the general 1 year limit that's in Title 21. And I've read that limit is that 1 year application where it's viable. It applies to all applications in Title 21. It's a very general rule. And of course, it's nice to have a general rule applicable to everything without these special exceptions or things that are different. But that's what we have. And basically, though, it is a policy decision about this period. And I think at the beginning in 2016, we, of course, expected a flood of applications as the new industry ramped up and a lot of excited people wanting to set up business. So maybe things have calmed down a bit to a point where this can be a 1-year thing along with the special land use permit, but only I would think applicable to the new licenses or endorsements. Because those are the ones that require the special land use permit. So a renewal or transfer, if it's the same parcel and it's just transfer of ownership, we don't transfer locations anyway. But perhaps that's something where the 90 days makes more sense because you're not going through the whole special land use permit process again. So we may cut this in terms of special land use permit timeframes and extending it to maybe just referencing Title 21. Anyways, we can keep it at 90 days of the ability for the director to extend for good cause. So having a little bit of discretion there with situations like as Meg pointed out, the applicants really no fault of their own, they're trying their best, but external circumstances are sort of roadblock to them. Anyways, so those are some of my thoughts.
All right, thank you. Ryan, you had something to add?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to clarify that the application form, it's an application for marijuana license and special land use permit. So, the license and special land use permit are definitely decided upon almost separately, but the application form is one application. And I just sort of have some questions if we were to adopt this language as it's written, just kind of how the mechanics of it would work, because the application is housed at the planning department. But if an applicant doesn't get all the materials within a 90-day period, it looks like that fee, the licensing fee or application fee would then have to be paid to the clerk's office. So then they would have to go to the clerk's office to pay that application fee, but the application is housed at the planning department. It just seems like it's going to create a little bit of a wonky situation there. And it may be best with Dean's recommendation to just point to the application submittal timelines that we have in Title 21.
Okay, so, just to clarify, so this whole G section would be reworded to say application meets whatever section, Title 21 dot whatever.
Right, I think that'd probably be best. Just given the way that we've handled it, and it has worked out to my understanding fairly well to just have the application housed by one department rather than breaking it up between two departments or creating confusion there. Okay,
so Ryan, are you saying there should be a fee or not to skip the fee at this point or for this stage?
The language doesn't really seem to make sense to me, I guess, because the applicant hasn't paid a fee yet. They only pay a fee once the application is deemed complete. So it's not like the moment they submit an application, they put a 50% deposit or something down on their application. They don't pay anything until we say, yes, you have all the materials that we need. Go ahead and submit, copies of your application and your application fee payment.
Okay. I guess at least, so are we looking for more fees to cover costs at the planning department?
We did sort of an internal analysis on that, I want to say 2 years ago. And at that time, we had decided that no additional application fees were necessary, but certainly we can have that discussion internally to see exactly where we're at, if there's any needed necessary revisions to that.
Okay. Well, that would be helpful. So it's a little bit separate from this. Any more on that, Ryan?
Nothing further, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Dean?
I just wanted to ask Ryan, when you talk about the application fee, do you mean the special land use permit application fee? And is that the same fee for all in planning departments, Title 21, all special land use permit application fees?
So through the chair to Dean, the application fee is specific to the special land use permit for marijuana. And it does not include a licensing fee, I believe.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So on this one, what do you want to do with this then? Do you want to look at it referring to just a standard Title 21 section? Thoughts from the committee?
Yeah, that would be my preference, but if there's other thoughts on that, I'd be open to that.
Okay, we see the okay. Okay, well, let's
some notes, so we will bring that back and again.
All right, thanks, Dean and Ryan. So, Dean, do you want to continue on through this?
Oh, sorry, you guys get to watch me make notes. Yes, I'll continue. And here's, I guess, adding the postmark rule for the renewal application, consistent with state reg changes, I believe. And here's just an update to the citation. And yeah, Mandy, I wasn't sure about this part, so deleting this number 3 for changes to the original. I think this relates to another section where they just say we're not making any changes, right?
Yeah, my understanding for this is it's kind of redundant. So they applicants have to submit applications for transfers. They have to submit ownership change reports. So they do all of this throughout the timeline of the years between their license renewals. And so the assembly, and I'm assuming for the board for the state, see all of these anyways. And so to get all of them again with the renewal application is redundant. So that's my understanding of taking this out, is it's unnecessary.
Yeah, I agree, it was redundant.
Mandy, we don't really see all of this, though. We would see if it's over 50% or something like that, isn't it? We raise the bar. So when we get the renewals.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mandy.
For the license applications, the assembly does see all of them except for the non-controlling interest changes. So that you would see with the renewal, but this is specific to just the license applications. So you do get all of those put before you currently. I do have a note further on in this document that the assembly may set stuff for public hearing. So there's a question about whether you want to still have stuff set for public hearing like we've been doing, but they do come before you.
Okay. All right, thanks. Okay, Dean, go ahead.
Okay. And here, I guess, is that the time frame to calendar years for disclosures of criminal and civil violations.
What what is that change from, Dean? Is that from state law, a change?
Before I think it was just open-ended, so is that right, Mandy? They were supposed to submit everything.
Yeah, that's correct. This put a limit on the timeline that they had to provide information for.
Is that, did the state initiate that change?
Yes. Yeah, this is a
Okay.
state one, and I think it was one that we didn't catch from before. I didn't see when it went in. It wasn't one of the recent ones.
Okay, thanks. That's important because we were looking at that one on Spinard Road and going back fairly far in our discussions with, I don't remember if his issues were 2 years or more, but it seemed like they were more than a year back. So, thanks.
If I may, that Spinard Road was a new application. This here's the report for renewals, right? And then with big way, the 2 years makes sense for renewal applications. It's Mandy, not the same for a new one. The new one,
Yeah, the new one, I didn't see that
Right.
they put that timeline on. Because I believe they have the restrictions on certain certain convictions that you are never allowed to apply for a license if you have in your history.
Okay. Good. Thanks.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
we
Dean.
just get that when they submit the state's new license application to us. Okay. And I guess this language is just for clarity. In this new age, relates to when a person is identified as a not considered resident of the state by definition. Mandy, do you know more about this?
So I believe they're doing this because of the changes to the allowance for the application for testing facilities. They have opened it up to allowing non-residents under the traditional definition that they had to be applicants. And so this adds some extra dynamics for them to allow for those testing facilities.
Yeah, and that was a big issue, right? There were only 2 in the state, and one of them had significant testing deficits that they've identified. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess the state needed to enable more testing facilities, so that there was enough supply of them to meet demand.
Yeah, I think they were trying to encourage more testing facilities to be established. Because
Well, this opens it.
Their requirements are pretty steep for somebody to be able to qualify for the testing facility, and so they wanted to open that up.
This opens it up to everything though, and it just, so with number 1, their primary residence is in the state, and that's not the same as being a resident.
So before, their requirement was based off of the PFD only. And so this captures that where their primary residence is in the state. But they have this good cause for not meeting the requirements under that definition, what Dean just highlighted. So this allows for the director or for the muni to allow for licensees or partial owners to fit under these other categories and not under that strict definition of the 306015.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, maybe this helps with testing facilities, but it looks more to me like it would accommodate, you know, if you've got, and we have at least one business that has like 20 owners, and if one of those owners, you know, moved to lower 48 to help an aging parent for a year, you know, I mean, that's certainly a good thing. And they would then not be a resident, would they have to sell their share of that business? And it sounds like this is directed towards that kind of scenario more
Yeah.
than bringing in licensing.
That could
Or,
definitely
I'm
be-
sorry, testing, more than bringing in testing facilities.
Yeah, that could definitely be a part of it too. That makes sense that it would fit under the rest of the licenses for that.
Okay. And this is simply reflects a change at the state level, is that correct?
Yeah, this was something that was a state change. So they're doing it anyway on the state application. So this is just mimicking what the state says.
Okay, so when we go through this document, is some of this is changes we would make, and then some just reflects the state. And say as a working document, it'd be nice to have some indication on this. That way,
Well,
if we
so
go changing
of-
things.
All of these are state ones. So where it has the effective date comment on the side, that's effective from
okay.
the state regulations. So these are all state incorporated changes. Some of them were just from 2018 and not 2019, so I didn't put that effective date, but these are all changes that the state has incorporated.
Okay, so that's our, if we see effective date, that means this is just matching the state.
Yeah, and then there's a few where I put more in-depth comments where I was asking questions about if we wanted to consider something that's current code and changing it, but everything that's added, underlined, is state changes.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Dean, you want to continue?
Can I, I'm sorry, can I cut in? My
Sure.
computer is letting me know that it's going to automatically restart, and I was trying to work with IT. So if I cut out while it's restarting, that's what's happening. I will join back.
All right, thank you. Good luck.
Yes. Oh, I was gonna note that, like, I think John identified that this new language, though, doesn't limit itself to testing facilities, although that might have been the intent. So this is for any of the marijuana establishments. So a little interesting. Anyway, not a bad thing, perhaps, like you identified. And before I go on, though, Mandy, you start the recording in Teams. If your computer restarts, do we lose the recording? Should we recess till you get back on? It's Mandy already restarted.
Is she gone?
John, it looks to me like we did lose the recording. It's usually up on the screen that the meeting is being recorded. I don't see that indication anymore.
Okay. What's a recommendation, folks?
My computer still shows we're recording,
Right.
and it's ticking along.
Okay.
Okay, good. Then
I don't know how to look.
maybe it's still, I don't either. All I know is I usually have it up there and it's not up there right now.
Okay, but Meg, you say we are being recorded. Then let's go. Let's continue then, Dean.
Okay.
Cell phone, it did keep me off. And I do have the note on my phone that it said I joined a meeting being recorded. So I did ask IT that. Hopefully it is. We will find out.
All right, thanks.
All right. Well, we'll make a note of it, and that'll be fine. So, let's see. Next, we have under oath is not quite the same as unsworn falsification. that's what we have for the application. We're not making any change there, right? And here's, I guess, a good change for efficiency that that's well. So if it's transferring to new owners, it would just suffice to submit a form saying, and again, I guess that's under oath, right? There's no changes to the operating plan, premises, and so forth. So they don't have to submit the same thing we already have. If it's just a paper transfer, I guess.
Okay.
And here for the ownership changes, it's also seems for efficiency, so the municipal clerk can approve. It doesn't come to the assembly, right, Mandy, if no new owner is disqualified. I would look at that language a little closer. I don't think
Yeah.
it means not disqualified, but go ahead.
Yeah, that's correct. This was allowing for those ownership changes, which is kind of what we do now anyways. I think this is just clarifying under state the process, but it's been kind of what we've done anyways. It's those changes of report of ownership that are non-controlling interest happen, and then it shows up on the renewal applications. And that's the time that it goes before the assembly.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would note that many times in code updates, some changes are simply to conform to current practices which aren't prohibited or something, but are efficient, and language changes acknowledge, make it explicit. And so. I guess that we wanted to note about the public hearing part, and Andy touched on that earlier. Scheduling a public hearing on the renewals or transfers, those are discretionary. So that would mean, I guess, resolutions on the agenda, and then an assembly member wants to make a motion to set it for a public hearing at the next meeting, they could do so. And there's no change here, but I guess as we've evolved in this process in industry, maybe Mandy wanted to point out to take a look at this again. Is there anything to add?
Yeah, so this was one of the questions that I had is currently we do put before the assembly all of the transfer applications of the license and the controlling interest, and we set them for public hearing as well. So they would go before the assembly anyway for approval, but we've been setting them for public hearing. Is that something that you would like to continue, or would you like them just to go before you for action, like on the consent agenda? And that's kind of a overall policy question, but kind of with the sunsetting of the renewals going for first time public hearing, maybe we want to do a change for these guys as well. It might be a good time to look at that and see if that's something you still want to have as publicly heard items.
Yeah, let me see. Crystal?
Yeah, thanks. This actually might be a good place to clarify when we actually do have public hearing for a renewal. And, there was some language that I'd submitted about what would actually trigger a renewal going back to CEDC. And so maybe that's the way we kind of craft this, is that when there is something that triggers that renewal to want to be held in a public hearing setting or go to CEDC. So maybe we could basically not have any of those renewals on for public hearing unless they qualify for one of those trigger criteria. And maybe we put that in here. So, so anyway, just throwing that out, because we have talked about that idea of at what point we can be, how we can be more subjective or objective about how we deal with renewals. So maybe this is a good opportunity to say there are some we won't need to review, and there are others that will have a trigger that sends them back to CEDC and to a public hearing. Thanks.
Okay. Thoughts on that, Dean? Mandy?
Yeah, I'm
Yes,
making notes for Crystal's language. I think that would be helpful for the clerk's office to have direction on when to specifically set it for public hearing and not.
Yes, and at the beginning here, I mentioned something about the drafts, and I thought my comments weren't here, I guess, so I apologize. There's a little failure of document management here on my part. So I do have Crystal's suggestions, and I had drafted them in, but I guess we in this draft that it wasn't include some of what I had updated before. I guess is in another draft somewhere. So I apologize, but I do already have that, and I would need to look again to see which section we put it under. I think that we put that under Crystal, the criteria listing you sent me up in one of the earlier sections on the renewal application process. I guess that was in 36 here somewhere. Right. Well, anyway, sorry. So I do have that language, and Andy, you can make notes, and we'll reconcile with a good draft before the next time. Whoops, I went beyond myself. So here we are. So we'll see some changes. It'll be clearer next draft we send you. Let's see. So our next is yeah, it's an important change because we see a lot of times it's the applicant's behavior in the past that demonstrate compliance is unlikely in the future.
Okay.
And I guess here's the or grounds for denying renewals. And here we have the annual license fee, and again, we have 0 for that for all the licenses, and then an application is 0. And as I had mentioned, that might be something that we can actually charge as an application fee as opposed to a license fee. And I think though that most of these changes are just to update language so they cover renewal as well as yeah. I will be revising that a little bit so it's just a little less repetitive.
Yeah, and this was just my question about, Dean, what you've been talking about, the operating fee versus the application fee. And like I said, we've used operating fee previously. And so if we are able to do the application fee, maybe we can go through and clean it up and make it consistent and use the same language unless there's a different meaning, and then figure out what is the operating fee versus the application fee.
Yeah, I think that using the word operating just throws a curveball. This is just the license fee. So I would just, I think, delete operating, but just thinking out loud here. The difference, I think, is a license is fee. That's the fee for the privilege of having this kind of business in this industry within our jurisdiction, right? An application fee is more about the cost of our staffing and overhead to process and review and so forth. So, anyways, so here I think that this is a good Ryan question, but I'm going to guess that this, if things are outdoors, that this is covered in Title 21. I think we went through that when we had the on-site endorsement issues before us.
Yes, through the chair.
This is, no.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so that language, I did see that, and I think, if I'm remembering correctly, when we were initially discussing what parts of the state on-site consumption regulation should be adopted and which title they should go into, I believe we chose to withhold that information for a number of reasons, mainly the evaluation of the on-site consumption endorsement would take into account impacts to neighboring uses. We do require a screening fence or wall be placed around all outdoor consumption areas. We do notice the endorsement application to all property owners and residents within 500 feet of the application, which is greater than what the state does. And then there's always that catch-all of any other information the assembly finds relevant. We also have that catch-all in Title 21 too. And I believe there might also be a catch-all in Title 10 for the licensing portion of it. But essentially we had come to the conclusion that these requirements are not necessary because they're already accounted for in Title 21 through the endorsement application evaluation process.
All right, thanks. I'm sorry, Crystal spoke. Meg, did I miss you?
Yes, I just wanted to talk a little bit on the same point about, excuse me, that Crystal was making in terms of what applications are going to be going for hearing, and just make the suggestion that for renewals, transfer license, anything where there's already a baseline initial application that's been approved, that it be one consistent process for how it's determined whether or not it's going to go to public hearing, so that those in this industry are really familiar with how that decision is made, and so that we can also educate community councils about that as well, so that if there are issues that for some reason haven't made it up to enforcement or something like that, that everyone's just really clear on how, if we're not going to automatically set things for public hearing, how to get something to public hearing, and what those expectations are. That was it. Thanks.
That's good points. Thank you. Forrest?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question about the site obscuring fence. How does that interact with decks? And I ask because, well, I'm also thinking about our alcohol laws. Do we have the same requirement for site obscuring fences on decks where alcohol is served?
Through the chair, that I don't know. I'm not the individual in the planning department that's real in tune with the alcohol special land use permit process, but the question about the decks would, just for clarification, is that, if somebody were to have an outside deck or an outdoor deck?
I was thinking, to be more specific, I was thinking something on, a second or third floor that is well away from the street.
Oh, okay. So the way that the current regulations are written is that any outdoor marijuana consumption area has to be screened from view. So it would apply to if it was on the second floor, third floor. It's just to prevent neighbors from, seeing somebody consuming marijuana products.
Okay, and I guess I am really curious about this. I understand that some folks don't, care for the smell, and then it can cause headaches and that kind of thing. But if we're doing this with alcohol as well, then so be it. But I'm thinking in my head about some open decks we have around town, and people value the view, on the second or third floor, and maybe it's the case that folks in apartment buildings nearby can see people consuming alcohol, but I'm wondering why we feel it is so offensive to see someone consuming cannabis versus consuming alcohol. And so I don't know. If we already have those laws for alcohol, then so be it. I am not interested in disturbing those. But, I think that outdoor consumption with great Alaskan views is something that we should value, and perhaps we should be a little bit thoughtful about what it means to be sight obscuring. If it's sight obscuring from the roadway, then so be it. But from all the neighbors, I just don't think it serves a very profound public interest. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thanks. Mandy?
One thing to consider with this also is because the on-site consumption by inhalation didn't pass, it might not be an issue anyways. I think a lot of this was geared towards potential outdoor patios for smoking. And I don't know that it's the same issue being that it's edibles only.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment as well. I don't know if someone is eating cookies. I don't know if the neighbors can tell if those are infused with cannabis or not.
So, go ahead, Mandy.
Maybe a question for Ryan on that same note. So it's the same for if they have a edible on site versus inhalation?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay.
So now what we're looking at here, though, is a proposal to delete this section. And is that because it's in the Title 21 and not relevant to the licensing, Title 10?
Through the
Yes,
chair,
I'm
believe
sorry.
this is an addition.
I just added this deletion part.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it's addition. Okay, so it switched on me. Okay, and then, but there's a question, is this included in Title 21? Is this redundant, Ryan?
Through the chair, yes. I believe that whole section, in my opinion, could be taken out since we already account for those items in Title 21 and through the special use permit process review.
Okay. Thoughts on that from the committee then?
With Ryan, do you mean?
Through the chair, what was the question, Dean?
Oh, I stopped since the chair asked for comments from the members.
Oh, okay.
Well, I got nothing from the members, so go ahead, Dean.
Ryan, you said the whole section could be taken out, but you don't mean this whole section, Drew. Do you mean, this has some restrictions on what they cannot do that are operational oriented, but maybe you mean the characteristics, which I guess are like characteristics of use. Are you saying this whole section? More, well, could you specify what you said you thought could be taken out?
Oh, sure. Yeah, thanks for the clarification on it, Dean. So I was only referencing the highlighted text that was highlighted in red on the next page. I think it's 4A through E. Okay. I don't believe that that's in.
Got it. I just marked that up for deletion.
Okay.
So, question for the committee then. We have this section that kind of refers to on-site inhalation. And since that didn't pass, should all of that be deleted?
Well,
Yes, I would.
Crystal, you got any thoughts?
This isn't.
Well, if it can be deleted, yeah, I think there's probably several things in there that could probably be deleted. The problem comes in with just the word consumption, because we don't necessarily know if it's specifying consumption by edibles or consumption by smoking. So I think we probably have to watch some of that. But it seems to me that some of that language is specific to smoking, which we know we really don't have a need for. So we just have to basically make sure that we're deleting the ones that only pertain to on-site consumption by smoking.
Right, like the things that refer to ventilation and, smoke-free area for employees and so on.
Right.
Thoughts on that, Forrest? Meg?
My preference is to leave it in there, just because I do think we will likely accidentally remove something that will be used by the on-site consumption of edibles that we don't realize. And it seems it's in the law and it's inert, but I don't think it's harming anybody right now. So my preference would be to leave it in.
Those are certainly valid points. Yeah, I worry that someone reading this would go through and say, "Oh, you must be allowed to do this here," and because it reads that way, even though we voted it down. So it's a little bit misleading. I always kind of like to have the average person who reads this stuff know what we mean. So I mean,
you're right about. First of all, John, I don't know who the average person you're talking about that's going
to be reading this
code. But let's say, if we're talking about the person who's involved in the industry, they might be briefly confused. But as soon as they started a process to try and actually set up an on-site smoking facility, they would very quickly be disabused of that notion by our regulatory framework and by all the various different applications they'd have to submit.
One would think we had someone in Ocean View who bought a large house because it had a huge garage where he could start growing marijuana, and he read the state law and he said it's legit, and he bought his house with this. He started buying equipment, then he went to the city to get his license from the city and ran into a wall. So not everybody pays as much attention as we would think, and sometimes they invest a lot of money before they really get educated, but that is an outlier for sure. Okay, so I see Meg's comment, same as Forrest regarding on-site consumption, so to leave it in. So, okay. Okay, well, and I think that's, from my point of view, is fine. So, okay, Dean, do you want to continue? We've got about 12 more minutes. I don't know if there's anyone from the public we'll want to leave a little time for. Or will we be able to get through this? Dean?
I'm going to say maybe not, but I'll let Dean decide. I think there's a lot.
I'm sorry, I just got a message that my computer's going to restart soon, so I missed the precise question. I did want to say I highlighted, I think, the only two provisions that may be specific about consumption by inhalation. Actually, C2s would already prohibit smoking in areas where employees are under Title 16. So, but C3s, it starts with if it's by inhalation or smoking. Anyway, what was the specific question, please?
I was just looking at our schedule and seeing if we would be able to get through this, but I see we're at page 21 of 79. So I guess let's continue as far as we can today.
Okay, so I've joined on my phone, and I have 10 minutes left, which is just short of our meeting scheduled time before my computer restarts. So I will, yeah, maybe continue till we find a good place to stop. So, so let's see. Great. I think this is just a clarifying sort of change in language here to make sure that handler permits are possessed by everybody. And there's another section. There's another section about that later in the document. Let's see. And here, I guess, is also to track the state reg change about marijuana on display. I think I live straightforward. There was this change in the total amount.
Dean, I have that comment.
Randy, do you know more
Ours
about
is
that?
worded a little differently, and so I just wanted to point out what the state's regs say in the side versus ours. I don't know if we'd worded it this way and then they reworded it, might have been what happened for clarification. So I don't know if that's something we want to change to mimic what the state has, or if you like what we have.
Yeah, I guess we will get that closer. I sort of got the impression that was supposed to say if it's marijuana or a concentrate, that the total of it all, this is measuring the THC content, you know. So 1 ounce of usable marijuana, that might be the flower or bud that maybe has various amounts of THC depending on, you know, the type or strain or brand or whatever. Anyway, I'm sort of speculating, but right, we will look at that language. Did you say you wanted to put it on screen, Mandy? Or look at it later?
So I have it in my notes on the side. On the right side, the first note shows what the state has. So they just list more than 5,600 milligrams of THC in combined sales. And we kind of have a more wordy version.
Okay. Well, good. Well, we'll take a look at that and revisit it next time with the committee.
It would be good to match state wording if we can, I think, just from the applicant's point of view. If it's different, you know, if they're going through this stuff carefully and they see something different, they might wonder if there's a true difference in the meaning, and it doesn't look like we intend a different meaning here.
Okay, I agree. Basically, we can't be less restrictive anyways, so if we have something different here, or maybe risk some misinterpretation of that we're less restrictive. So, let's get to some exciting stuff. Mandy made a note that we maybe submit this to the health department and have them look and see if there's any update to the types of pesticides that are added or removed from this list, right? And
Yeah, just to
there's
check
some more
that.
exciting stuff down here.
Dean, can I cut in and ask a question about page 27? So 1080 360 is the restriction on advertising. The state repealed that whole section. I left it in because we added some extra advertising restrictions, but that whole section was repealed. Later on, they add stuff about trade shows, and they talk about some advertising there, and they add it later on towards the end, I believe, like in 800 or something. But I left it in because it's kind of a policy question of whether the municipality wants to keep those restrictions on top of the extra ones that were added. There was 361 and 362 were added by the municipality that were not state ones. So those two we added on top of that 360, which the state repealed. So kind of policy question of what we want to keep and differ from the state on.
Well, that's interesting. So Mandy, are you saying they repealed all of their restrictions on advertising?
Yeah, 360 was completely repealed. But later in the regs, they have added, it is 1080 760 that I put in, and it's their 360 760 that's about trade shows, and they have advertising restrictions added in there. But I don't see that they added in advertising restrictions for just the general licenses. So I don't know why. I didn't see anything, and I didn't have a chance to listen to their meeting or read the minutes to see what the reasoning behind repealing that section was. But the only thing that they reference now for advertising restrictions is in regards to the trade shows. And maybe that's kind of a legal thing. Maybe there was.
Andy.
Oh, there it is. 770. Okay. So it was a whole new section.
Yes, I think that what we looked at first up above was in a chapter just specific to the retail stores. And by moving it here to the 700s, that's applicable to all marijuana establishments. You know, the testing facilities and manufacturing, as well as retail stores and cultivation. So I think they just made it more broadly applicable, but I don't know if they actually changed what Mandy said, some of the restrictions that were previously up there, but need to look at them closer.
Okay.
So
okay.
That's the question of taking it out of the retail specific and adding it in under all of them, or if we're leaving some of them under specifically the retail, I guess.
Yeah, do we want to have different requirements for cultivation and manufacturing and testing than we do have for retail? I don't know, but maybe that's business decisions for them to make, right? So I have 55 seconds before my computer restarts, so I'm going to use my screen sharing.
Well, I think, Dean, since we're close to being done here, I think what would be helpful for the next meeting then is to maybe just on one thing to show us how the new state requirements compare to what we have, and then we can look and see where we want to land.
Okay, we'll
kind of a side by side. And so if we're about to lose you, I think we're close to the end here. So maybe this is a good ending point. And then Mandy, is there anyone from the public?
Let's see. I see maybe a couple. So
Hello? Hello?
Yep.
Okay, so let's go ahead and open up to public comments. So that sounded like Mr. Haberman. Would you like to speak?
Correct. Thank you. I'll be brief, and I got my timer. My name is Eugene Carl Haberman. I follow the public process. When the public process is not appropriate, decision made by the governing body is more like the public interest. First, note this. It was very interesting conversation you had, but I'm still concerned deeply that these team meetings that you've got, now I can listen in as a member of the public, respectively. There's a phone number. But when you have team meetings, you're also creating a sidebar conversation critically away from the public in which you are addressing and you're seeing documents among yourself because you've got a connection to see those documents. And I'm not talking about the side website where documents appear on the Muni page. I'm talking about your meetings that you're basically seeing each other and putting documents on the screen, and the public has no ability to see that. Yesterday at a meeting, a Muni meeting, dealing with geotech, whatever, the public was able to see documents presented. There is that connection, and the public has been having that availability, that invitation to be part of that meeting in that way. But this distance and you having a conversation in this way has created significant alarm to me as a member of the public to be able to really see what's before you that you are seeing among yourselves and having a conversation among yourselves at these meetings. Now, later on, it appears that if you go to the tape after the meeting and you pull in, you'll see these tapes appear and you see those visibility. But these live meetings you're having, you need to have that direct connection with the people and not for someone to have to re-listen to a meeting later on. Second is, and close this remark, it says assembly members, you're concerned about elections. There's a meeting with Assembly Ethics and Election Committee today later on, but that committee committee website does not have a place for the public to pull any documents, period, like you have as a committee, where you can go to the website. That's still one of the ones that stands out, and you're in the midst of dealing with legislation on elections, and the public cannot see it when those presentations are done at the meeting, even going to that level. So that's a problem there. And respectively, your agenda is the same as the previous agenda, the previous meeting of your committee, but the scenario is the documents that you were having for this committee meeting, the agenda was there, but the previous meeting had the same subject matter that you have, but a document should have been pulled on the website for the public to be able to pull what you're referring to. And that closes my remarks, and I wish you all the best.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Haberman. Some valid points there. Is there anyone else? Is it still *6 to unmute? Okay, I don't hear anyone else. Time to adjourn, folks.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, thanks everyone. See you at the next one.
Thanks, John.